Don't forget to like and share this broadcast with your friends and family on Facebook Live as well as on YouTube. Let all of your friends and family know to subscribe so that you know when the Center of Hope is going live.
Welcome all you real talkers out there tonight. Thank you for joining us. If it's 9 p.m. on Monday night, it's time for Real Talk. And I'm so glad that so many of you are coming into the Real Talkers space on tonight. As you're coming in, just throw something in the comment section so we can acknowledge you on tonight. This is going to be a very informative conversation, spirited conversation. We have some experts in this space that will be joining us on tonight, and we're very excited about what we're going to be dealing with on this evening. Hey, Linda Green, Phoebe Collier, Barbara Waring, Crystal Smith, Trina McCrae. The Real Talkers are coming in. Our co-host is here on tonight. We're going to bring our co-host on, the Honorable, His Grace, Bishop Liston Page II. Bless you, sir.
Hey, good evening, everyone.
Bless you, bless you, bless you, bless you. Yvonne East, Abronia Scott. They're coming in on this evening. Please hit the share button, tag as many people as you can. Let them know that Real Talk is on the air and we're ready for a live conversation. Lisa, bless you on tonight. Trina McCrae Davis, bless you on tonight. All of the Real Talkers, as you're coming in, drop something in the comment section. Barbara Smith Taylor, bless you on tonight. As you're coming in, drop something in the comment section. Barbara Waring sends her greetings, Bishop Page, to you. Yvette Greaves, bless you, Yvette. Juanita Wins, good evening, bless you, bless you, bless you. As the Real Talkers are coming in on tonight, we're so excited. Giselle Muse, bless you on tonight. All right, listen, I don't know about you, but I'm still rising from the resurrection. I'm still on a high rise from Sunday. It was a great time of worship and recognition of the resurrection worship experience. So I'm really excited about that. Excited about what's happening on this week and what's coming up. Bishop, what's going on, man? What's happening? Talk to us.
Man, just working hard. Resurrection Sunday was fantastic as well. Great Resurrection Sunday.
Awesome. Well, tonight, as you know, we have a tremendous dialogue planned for the Real Talkers on tonight. And I thought it was, appropriate for us to kind of breach this conversation, as we often do as issues come up in our community and people are asking questions about, what's going on, the perceived rise in crime here in the city. People are afraid to ride the subways. I hear it every day, from members of my church, members of the community, people that I see all the time. And they say, I'm not riding the subways. Why? And they said, well, those people are crazy. And so, I mean, they make those blanket statements, but it's real because we're dealing with, crime. We're dealing with mental illness. We're dealing with, people that are, are down, on their proverbial luck, so to speak. You have people that are coming to this country, as everyone has come to this country, but they can't work. And if people can't work, they're going to turn to some alternative to make money. And that's going to be in some underground market or some way to, and some of it is going to be, legal underground, black, gray market work. Some of it is going to be straight illegal, activities. I mean, it's just a part of life. So we've got almost a perfect storm coming out of COVID in this post-COVID era, in dealing with this massive migration of folks that are coming from other countries. And, New York is taking, a big brunt of those, folks that are coming from other places. Like everyone here has come from other places at some point in time. It's the United States of America. and everyone here has come from some place. It's interesting that, you know, and I'm not going to get into that. And we have a tremendous guest on tonight that could dive into a lot of that. But particularly, you know, tonight's subject is recidivism, and the reason why, you know, and as we were talking, you know, prior to tonight's show, Liz, you know that we both of us are very concerned about our youth, about young Black men, about the diminishment of family. You know, I had a conversation on the other day with a young man, and we were talking about, you know, the welfare system in the 60s and how it was introduced. Anyway, I'm messing up here. Let me talk about our guest on tonight, Saeeda Leslie Dunston, Chief Executive Officer at Elm Corps Youth and Adult Activities Incorporated since August 2014. She is recognized amongst her peers and human service providers throughout New York State for developing and implementing culturally competent programs and services that address the challenges encountered by marginalized communities in empowering individuals and families to become change agents and engaged participants in their communities. Prior to Elm Corps, Ms. Dunston served in senior management positions in several boroughs and citywide advocacy and policy-focused coalitions that address poverty, anti-racism, healthcare needs of marginalized populations and communities throughout New York City. Ms. Dunston's leadership has secured Elm Corps' position as a vital service provider and advocate on the neighborhood level, and has been instrumental in building capacity through collaborative relationships with public and private partners. She has developed and enhanced new and existing programs, leveraging organizational resources to address the prevailing socio-economic health disparities that challenge Queens communities and promote inter and intra-agency collaborations around issues of behavioral health, health equity, social and economic justice, anti-stigma, and community education. Saeeda is also shepherded Elm Corps' first supportive and affordable housing project, providing permanent housing to chronically unhoused and persons recovering from serious substance use disorder and older adults. She is also the proud wife and mother, grandmother, the deep personal and family ties and connections to Queens, and in particular, the Elmhurst Corona communities. It was important for me to read that bio in its entirety so that our real talkers will know who they're talking to on tonight. And so let's help me welcome our guest on tonight, Sister Saeeda Leslie Dunston. Welcome.
Hi, good evening, good evening, good evening. You know, when you hear people read your bio, it's kind of like, I don't know. But just thank you for the invitation. I want to thank both of the bishops for allowing me on this evening. I think there's something really powerful about the idea of real talk, you know. Folks use the word real often, but I think that what you guys are doing is very, very beneficial to just be able to have honest and transparent conversations about the things that are happening in our communities. So thank you for the invitation on this Monday night.
Well, Saeeda, thank you so much. And I mean, I know a person of your stature and the magnitude of your schedule and body of work that you're doing, not only in Queens, but I might say citywide, statewide. You know, I'm honored to have you here on tonight, sis. So let me start by saying, you know, you heard my preamble, so you kind of understand, you know, and we've talked prior to many times, and we talked today, of course, too, about this subject, and we share, you know, equal values as it relates to a lot of the issues that you're fighting for, that I'm fighting for, that Bishop Page is fighting for. And, you know, when the city is struck with such a, I guess, wave, maybe I can call it a wave, like maybe it's a wave of violence, maybe it's a wave of incidents, but we're experiencing a wave, a moment, and it makes the city feel unsafe, You know, I talk to people all the time. They don't want to ride the subways. I hear people say, I'm driving. What are you going to drive for? Get on the subway, get on the LIR. And I'm not doing that. And so, although we are arguably the safest big city in America, and I often hear the mayor and other advocates for the city, you know, give us the figures about the millions of people that ride the subways with very minuscule incidents. You know, I mean, one incident is too many. I mean, because listen, could you say, oh, well, just because 4 million people ride the subway and only 20 people got attacked? No, listen, I could have been, no one needs to be attacked on the subway, but I get it. And you know, so I think that, you know, there's this perception, and now we have the National Guards flooding the subways. We have more focus and concentration with policing, maybe over policing. I don't know. Some communities say they want it. Some communities say that, you know, it's too much. You know, I mean, there's this whole thing. And then they're tying this whole narrative. Every time there's an incident, the whole narrative is being reconnected back to bail reform. And they're saying, well, there's a saying now, catch and release. So folks that are,
not to interrupt, but that's not a new statement, right? That has centuries old historical racialized language, right? Catch and release is a powerful racialized language that goes as far back as slavery. And so I didn't want to interrupt because I love where you are. You're going on a roll, but I wanted to, when you said it, you know, it's one of the talking points that I actually have tonight, is that the mindfulness of the language and the narrative that is being utilized, and us knowing where this narrative comes from. So
well, now Saeeda, I love that. Can you kind of expound on that catch and release? Because I've heard it, you know, down through the years, but in different contexts. And so could you kind of explain it today and then maybe take it back historically so that folks can draw that linear connection?
Sure. So before I get into the language, I just want to kind of introduce a little bit of why we are here, right? Why Elmcore specifically. I appreciate the idea that Saeeda is the voice, but I'm the voice representing an institution, right? I could say an agency, but an institution. Elmcore is the oldest Black founded, Black led, Black sustained human justice nonprofit in Queens, right? Next year in 2025, it will be 60 years that this organization has existed. Bishop, you've known the org for forever. Many of your listeners, I'm sure, know this organization historically. And so I feel like I speak on behalf of decades worth of substantive work that Black people in the Queens community have been talking about justice. And so I just kind of want to make sure that that's in the space, that Saeeda is not speaking just on Saeeda, but on multiple shoulders of individuals who've been having these conversations about what is just in our communities. And bail reform is one of those conversations about what is just, right? And so to the point of catch and release and the historical understanding of it and what it means now and what it meant then, is we all, you know, we all understand the idea of catching individuals who are running away, right? And so this concept of catch and release, it wasn't like a release into the wild, but it is the animalistic concept of the human condition, primarily for Black folks, then becoming Black and brown folk, right? But the understanding of catch, the release wasn't off on your own. The release was back, right? The release was back to where you belonged, and at that point was to people. The issue of recidivism and what's so problematic of using racialized language that was kind of codified in the concept of slavery is that many times we are a part of accepting this language and not realizing the larger kind of narrative or dog whistling that might be happening at the time that we are accepting this language and not putting it into context, right? No human being should be caught, right? Like the idea of catching a person has a lot of history, and it wasn't based on human beings,
I'm
right?
so glad that you brought that up. I'm so glad that that's why I was trying to get you to go, because, and that's the public narrative that's being, interjected into the societal conversation. And again, going back to, and I want to dispel these myths, and that's why I have you on, because you're an expert in this space. People are saying that the reason why this wave is happening, whether it be the wave of attacks or incidences, mental health occurrences, is going back to bail reform, and they're tying it back to that. I just want to make sure that real talkers know if that's true or not, or is there something that we need to know about bail reform? I know, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I know that bail reform took place because we were basically housing people that could not afford to post a cash bail to prove or to hear their accusers, right? And so it's an unfair system because our white counterparts have the resources, or others have the resources to post that bail and get out. And those that don't have the resources, that are going through the system, they're not criminals until they're convicted. So that means that they are going through the system. It's a human justice system, not a criminal justice system. But it's all being kind of blamed on, going back to, like, it's like people don't want this equitable exchange to happen in the criminal justice system. And I let me wind that back, because I don't know how much justice is in the system, and I'm not sure that people are starting out as criminals. Matter of fact, quite the contrary. I think that when folks go into a system to be heard concerning an offense, it is an atrocity that you have to go into it with the mindset that I have to fight for my life. And I'm not just going here to be held, to be heard. I have to go into a system that I might die in immediately, or get raped, or any other, incidences that may happen, even in the system that is holding me to be heard. So I want to dispel some of those. I want to give the real talker some information. Saeeda, is this because people are now getting out of jail with low or no bail? Explain that to us. Explain that to the real talkers.
So, one, I'm going to say I'm not an expert. I know that you use that word for me, but when I say I'm not an expert, I think everybody in the community are the experts. And so that's one of the things of being mindful of narratives outside of your space, because many people have narratives that might be contradictory to even what they're seeing on the news. When you talk about the numbers, and is there a wave, right? Is there an actual wave, right? Is it as severe, or is it as big, right? To your question, is this bail reform? Is this the issue of bail reform? I think the first part is to remember, like you said, why bail reform had to even be an issue. And more importantly, isn't it not a part of the system that I am supposed to be, deemed innocent until proven guilty, right? And so bail is set up prior to, it's a pre-trial situation. It's before I am convicted. It is before you have convicted me of any crime, right? That bail is offered. And so the real question about bail reform as a whole is it reforming the concept of bail, or holding the concept of the initial understanding of what bail was supposed to be? Because when there is a disproportionality, or a disparity in who can get bail, who cannot get bail. Bail reform was not set up for the most violent individuals. And I think that that's really important to say, right? It was primarily done for nonviolent misdemeanors, for folks that, were not, they're not folks who are committing rape. It's not people committing murders. Like, these are misdemeanors most of the time that are nonviolent, right? And so we have to ask ourselves, and as an anti-racist, one of the things that we're also very cognizant of is not using Black and brown and poverty interchangeably, right? Bail reform has a bigger impact on those who are poor, regardless of race, right? But there is something that happens in the criminal penal system that is very systemically racist, right? No different than any other system in this country, right? So let's just say that as well. As an anti-racist, we look at all systems, right? Not one specific system. But in this particular system, there are people who come to court with a predisposed concept of others, of them, right? And in that predisposed concept of them, they are criminal before they're even convicted. And I would suggest that a part of, to me, criminality is, it is criminal for us to accept poverty, right? We talk about acts of legal and illegal, but is it legal for us to be in a space where so many people are poor, to your point, Bishop, that they're making decisions for survival? Right? And when people are making decisions for survival, we already know what happens. We already know what happens. And so, is it bail reform? I think I want to caution our community of, when we hear it, to say, well, give me the facts, right? Give me the data. I wanted to give this point, that the data from New York City Criminal Justice Agency shows that in December of 2023, almost 50,000 people were in community awaiting the resolution of a criminal case, and 95.7% were not arrested and prosecuted for any new offense.
Wow. Wait.
95% of people were out, right, in community awaiting their trial and had no new offense. So the issue is, when we kind of connect things that should not automatically be connected, we create this inflated kind of understanding that can become problematic, because no one should be unsafe. No one should be unsafe, including people who have not been convicted of a crime.
Right.
And I don't know about you, but I've never heard anyone say prison was safe. No one. Not people who have been in jail and prison, not corrections officers. I've never heard anyone say that jail and prison is safe. And so no one should be unsafe, inside or outside, behind or outside or behind the wall or outside. No one should be unsafe. And so if people have not been convicted, and I say again, bail reform was predominantly and has been used predominantly for people with nonviolent misdemeanors who are not able to make bail due to their financial situation. Because I can tell you, there are people right now that are in the news. I try not to utilize people's unfortunate situations, but they have enough money, they'll make bail, arrested or not arrested. That is not who bail reform was for.
Right. But it also demonstrates, though, and so now that we know, who bail reform was for, we know what bail reform is. It's a vehicle to level the playing field so that people that don't have the money for misdemeanors and simple offenses can come out of the system and be heard in a non-custodial manner, just as their white counterparts that have the capacity to post that bail. And 97% of those people that are released do not commit additional crimes while out on bail waiting to be heard. That's what you said earlier, right?
95.7, so 96 for a clean roundup.
Okay, 95.7, 96%. That's a big number. Bishop Page, that's a big number. So I mean, you know, the narrative that me and you, Bishop, have been hearing is that, you know, a lot of what's happening, you know, are a lot of the incidents or the wave of crime that's happening is happening as a result of people not being properly assessed in the system and released to go out to commit other crimes. So Saeeda, help me with this. How come every time we hear the news and there's a crime, they say, yeah, and this guy was just arrested and released, you know, and commit. So even though what you're saying is right, they're highlighting the 4%, right? So explain how, I mean, how do we overcome that? Listen, we read headlines and listen to, you know, sound bites. How do we overcome that? I mean, or just give me some bandwidth.
Well, Bishop, I will say you do things like this. We do things like this, right? There's got to be a counter narrative that is spoken, because narratives, like all narratives, are to create a story. There is a story that has to be told, right? There is a story that is required. And so you have to ask yourself, what is the intent and what is the purpose of that particular narrative, right? Which is why I kind of talked a little bit too about us being mindful of racialized language, of who is being put in the news. We're not hearing of a lot of the white folks that are out on bail who may be committing a reoffense. It wasn't the 4% are not 100% Black and brown people, right? But that is not what we are seeing. That is not the conversation that's being had. And so we have to ask ourselves, what exactly is the intention and what is the purpose of highlighting those things? I mean, we are in a society that a lot of our business is attached to the unwellness of community, right? The unhealthiness of community. You know, I say this all the time, if we invested in human beings, the way that we commodify human beings, we'd be much better off, right? If we looked at human beings not as commodities that feed systems and make systems money, but invested in human beings, we would find another way, right? As anti-racists, we say anything that's constructed can be deconstructed. We have become accepting of the idea that this is just the way it has to be. And I would suggest that that is not the case. It is structural. And so things that are structural can be deconstructed and can be restructured into something different. And so the narrative, we have to ask ourselves, what is the narrative doing? Just from a capitalistic, and I'm not making this about capitalism, but the understanding of capitalism is also understanding marketing, understanding how you get people to use their purchase power. Is you mentioned folks saying, I'm going to drive into the city, I'm not going to take the train, but there's still a lot of people taking the train, right? MTA is still full every day. There are people taking the train, but there's a lot of parking lots in New York City that didn't have as much business during 9 to 5 as they do now. I know people personally after the shooting in Brooklyn a couple of years ago, folks who were making only $45,000 and $50,000 that were paying weekly amounts to park in the city. Do you know how much of their income? And these were people with children. These were people in the outer boroughs that were going into Manhattan in order to to work. And so there is also a business that happens in fear mongering, right? There is a business, there is things that are going to financially benefit from these things. And a part of the financial benefits are also to think about how and which way the prison system might be impacted and the lack of funds that might be being funneled into the jails and the prisons right now. And so how do we kind of recapture, and I'm using that word on purpose, how do we recapture a captive audience that will allow us to sustain that business? And so we do things like this. We talk in community. We have real talk. We talk to each other. We say, we don't minimize the fear that people have either, right? Like, we don't tell people, don't be scared. Because if you bombard people every day with images and you bombard them every day with stories, it is almost required. A part of our fight or flight is to react. And we have to ask ourselves, is that the intent?
You used the word commodities, and you started talking about markets, and that you know that pushes all my buttons, right? So the prison industrial system, is such a moneymaker. All right, it's probably one of the greatest single money makers in our society, maybe in our country, because a simple fact: we spend $500,000 a year to house, watch this, one person on Rikers. Now, Saeeda, how is that possible that we have $500,000? I'm worth $500,000 to somebody in jail. And watch this. Now, I'm just trying to calculate, doing a quick and dirty on my mortgage per year. I'm trying to do a quick and dirty on my utilities per year, and my food consumption, and my gas consumption, and my clothing needs. I don't know. Listen, it's not $500,000, sis. It's not $500,000. Matter of fact, with $500,000, I have a Lamborghini outside. I have $500,000 a year. Bishop Page, help me. Listen, you know this stuff better than me, man. What, $500,000 a year in Rikers Island, one person? What could you do with $500,000 a year?
I think Saeeda said it right. It has become an economic engine that I would call it exploitation. I would call it a new way of transatlantic slave trade. That's what I call it. I call it the modern contemporary slave trade that our forefathers experienced when they were taken from a homeland and brought over here on these ships. I think prisons, jails, incarceration is just another way for the dominant culture, if we want to call it that, those which are privileged, to make more money. Unfortunately, but we cannot deny that the system is not just broken, but it is becoming much more apparent that people that are being released that have committed some violent crimes. Saeeda may know this. About maybe 3 weeks ago, there was a young lady who was brutally beaten in the Bronx by a man. And when they came to the house, she had been stabbed. She had been raped multiple times. And there was a dead body in the trash can. This happened about a month ago. That young lady was a member of my church in New Jersey. And this young man had just been released 8 weeks ago from prison for committing a violent crime. So I do believe that it wasn't designed for violent offenders, but I think what we're seeing is violent offenders being released. But I think what we don't really talk much about is mental health. I think a lot of them are suffering from the mental health piece. And I think we start looking in that area, because you can't really rehabilitate anyone in that type of environment. If you're in an environment like that, you can't be rehabilitated. You can be tamed, but you can't be rehabilitated.
Ooh,
So
that's a word there.
I think it really starts with that mental health piece. What'd you say, Mitch?
I said that's a word there, but it's so true. Tamed. I mean, it's wow. I mean, because you're right. Because if I mean, and then let's go past the hearing stage, and if there, and because listen, you know, all we like sheep have gone astray. So I mean, you know, we make mistakes, we commit crimes, we pay for those crimes if we do. Let's not get lost on the fact that we do. Some people do commit crimes, right? But there has, if you're saying, okay, and because of that crime, we're going to penalize you with a custodial sentence, and where our objective in the custodial sentence is to give you some time to reflect on what you have done, and maybe because you are a human being, maybe there are some redemptive qualities that we could redeem and help recapture, if I use that word again, to help you make that adjustment back into society being better than you were before you went in. That doesn't happen. That's not ever happening, because it's a myth. I'm sorry.
I mean, prison has, and Saeeda can speak to this much better than me, but from my experience, it's a nomenclature, it's a pathology there, and it's not a healthy one. It continues to perpetuate more crime. More crime takes place in the prisons than outside. So it's a nomenclature, it's a culture there. So how can you be rehabilitated when, if you're going to survive, you have to embrace the pathology? If you're going to survive, you have to adapt to the environment. And rehabilitation is not about adapting, it's about transformation, it's about change. So if I'm telling you the only way you can survive, you have to become more violent, or you're going to be raped, or you're going to be taken advantage of, or you have to get connected to a group that may not even fall within the sphere of your theological concept. I'm gonna become whatever it is in order to maintain some sanity. So you become something that you're not in order to survive, and you're not being renewed. You're not being retooled. I like the word she used. You're not being deconstructed and reconstructed. You're being taught how to be better at being, I want to call it juvenile, but being reckless is the best term I can come up with. So I think the reform piece, I don't know how we're going to reform it, because Black and brown bodies are mostly there. And when I say Black and brown, I'm including Hispanics with that. But we're at a deficit, and our women are suffering. Our communities are suffering. Our children are suffering. So I don't know if reform, who's going to reform it? The ones who's putting all the laws in place and getting the benefits? I mean, because the people who are building the prisons are making millions of dollars. So the more prisons, the more money. So who wants to reform it when it's a $1 billion business, in my opinion?
No, you're spot on, Bishop.
I want to say something, because I don't want to pass by what you said about the young lady that was a part of your church, that was clearly personally connected to you. And I have to be honest, I don't know the story, right? If I'm being very I don't want to pretend like I know it. I don't. But the story you just told is disheartening by all stretches. And her life matters, right? And I don't want the narrative of either part of the story, bail reform, not bail reform, criminality, prisons, to take away that that's somebody's daughter, that's somebody's sister, that's somebody's mother, that's somebody, like that is somebody, right? And I don't want us to think, and I don't want the real talkers to hear us in this conversation saying that at any point, right, we are, like I said, people should be safe, period, right? And so I don't know the story of that man. I don't know when he was released. I don't know, was he out on bail? Did he do a lot of time? Was he out on parole? Like, there's all these intricacies that sometimes it takes us a long time to dig through to find out the whole story of, like when they said release, what does that mean? Did he do 10 years? Did he do 3 years? Was he out on, but we hear it one way and then we don't know what it is. There are human beings that are violent. There are human beings that have committed violent acts. There are human beings that become more violent from exactly what you said, Bishop, being inside of a institution that is required for people to become extreme survivalists.
Yes.
We talk about, we watch TV and you'll see like these folks in the woods and they'll call them survivalists, right? And if you go and you see their homes, they have like all the weapons that a human being can have. They have stuff stored. They know how to commit all, and they're survivalists outside. Imagine being a survivalist inside a cage without your arsenal, without all of those things. And then they come home, and this is what I was talking about, the investment. There's no investment when people re-enter. One of the folks had popped up, as I've been watching the chats that popped up, that talks about the fact that there is nothing when folks come home. Bishop Taylor, you talked about the amount of money that is invested in retaining a human being and detaining a human being in Rikers that many times has not been convicted, right? And so the majority of people in jails have not been convicted. And so the amount of money it takes to house someone who is still not even deemed guilty yet, right? So even when we talk of going back to bail reform, the question is, even if I'm committing a non-violent misdemeanor, there is probably a very good chance I need services. If I've ended up in your courtroom, there is a very good chance I need services. There's a good chance I am not making an equitable amount of pay. There is a good chance that I'm dealing with multiple traumas. There's a good chance that there are things happening in my family that need to be addressed. And so when people are sent ROR, right? Released on your own recognizance, right? What are we giving them that their recognizance can actually support them? Like, what have we given them if we are willing to invest so much in their incarceration? How much are we prepared to invest in their actual thriving? And so when we talk about those types of things, is, to me, when I said about criminality, isn't that criminal?
Right. Of course, because my point is, if there's $500,000 invested, and we can break that down, if you stay there 3 months, 5 months, come on, 6 months, I want to stay in that hotel. How much is $500,000 over 12 months? I mean, what is that? I mean, I don't know. Is that $60,000 a month?
I don't know. I'm not good with the math.
Yeah. All right. So, Bishop, can I show the picture of the young lady?
Yes. I want to. Saeeda, I'm texting now, trying to send me the article. I know I have it. They're going to send it to me with the Daily News.
Oh, dear God.
Yes. Saeeda, that was a member's daughter. Now that's just one picture. As I said, Bishop Taylor, others. Now, she was in surgery, pelvis destroyed. On and on. I can give you a list of things that happened to her. But this gentleman, this boy, this man that did this also had another young lady's dead body in the house, in the trash. So when the police finally came, they only came to the apartment because of the stench from the dead body. So when they got there, he was gone and she was hanging on for her life. Of course, they apprehended him, but after apprehending him, he had just been out of prison for maybe 4 or 5 weeks. I mean, so to me, it's become rather personal to me. Recidivism, it's become rather personal to me, because you see these things on Law and Order, on television, but you never think that you would have to walk into a hospital room and see a young woman in this condition that's been brutally beaten and raped by her ex-boyfriend who just got out of prison.
I mean, for me, this is a difficult one to look at. Obviously, I like I said, this is someone's daughter. This is, I'm someone's daughter. I'm somebody's sister. I'm someone's mom. I'm someone's grandmother, right? That's hard to watch. I can tell you personally, I too have buried a child that was killed, that was murdered, right? And I tell people, even with that reality, I still say prison is a place that creates things that is inhuman. And that's why I said, even with the loss of personally losing a life, I have to be mindful of the narrative, because I don't know that man, but you can't tell me that that person has all of their sanity intact.
Correct. I agree.
Because that is that level of violence, that level, we talk about it all the time. For you to dehumanize me, you have to dehumanize yourself in order to do that. In order for you to dehumanize me, you have to dehumanize yourself in order to do that. And so in order to do that to another human being, where is your humanity, even for yourself, that is something that you could do to another human being? More than likely, without question, without cause, right? And so you talked about mental health services, and that's what I'm talking about, the level of investment that clearly should have been put into that human being that committed that crime many, 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 many years ago. Because I'm quite sure whatever trauma he's experienced, whatever things he's experienced, it didn't sneak up in the dark. Whatever he experienced in prison was not known. And so you send people back into community with nothing when they went into prison with nothing. And so it's just unfortunate, because you said something that I think is really important, because this was someone she knew.
Yes.
This is a human being that at some point, she believed loved her. So this is not a random act of violence. This is not a subway pushing, right? That is what we're seeing on the news, right? The subway pushing, the randomized aspect of this. This is something that could happen to any of our children by someone that they believed loved them, that probably are exhibiting signs for decades, many times, that needed support and did not get it. But our system said, but we will fund your incarceration, but we will not fund your ability to thrive, so that you do not take out all of whatever you may be feeling inside. We talk about the fact, a good friend of mine is actually listening on Dr. Tracy Gardner, who's been doing this work a long time, and she speaks all the time about the brain and how that is the only organ in our body, that we stigmatize, that we criminalize, and the most important part of our behaviors. It is the most important part of our functions. But if you use substances, there's something wrong with you. Which impacts your brain. If you're having trauma that impacts your brain, we see that as a failing of the human being. But if my pancreas doesn't do what it's supposed to do, or my heart doesn't do what it's supposed to do, or my lung doesn't do what it's supposed to do, we don't say it's the fault of the heart or it's the fault of the human being that the heart is in this situation. We have to really understand that we are investing too much in the illness and the sickness and the unhealthiness of our community, because that is the way it was constructed for somebody to make money. There is a business model, right? So, Bishop Page, you said it's not just broken. I'm suggesting, and you've heard it before, I'm not a genius in this, that it's doing exactly what it was designed to do. And that there is a business model. And the reason why I always say business is because we talk about these things like they're almost happening, right? Like there is a structural business model that requires that people be ill. And I am saying, why aren't we investing in people's wellness? Like, what is so horrible about the fact that that girl should never have been in that situation? See, because we talk about it like after he comes out, after this happens, after. What about the before?
Yeah.
What about the before? Like, why aren't we investing in the before and stop always talking about the outcomes? If we don't invest in the income, right? We already know what the outcome's going to be.
Wow. Listen, this is a great place to pause, because we're coming back with part 2 on next week. And I pray, Saeeda, you can join us if your schedule permits, because we have joining us next week Dr. Divine Pryor, who, as you know, is an expert on prison recidivism. He's been on this show before, and an expert in a lot of what we're talking about on tonight. And so if you're available, and
a good brother of mine, let me just say that. I laughed. I was muted, but I laughed when you said, if you could come back, if your schedule permits. For those in Real Talk world, Bishop reached out to me this morning and I showed up. And that's how important this kind of conversation is to me. I will have to look, because we do have our gala next week. So we are, it's a busy week for us. But it's important. And this is not for Saeeda, because like I said, the community knows what's best for community. I believe that all the time. So the same way I showed up, I ask all of those real talkers, show up for each other. Have these conversations in your living rooms, in your workplaces, wherever you are. Please continue to have these conversations, because it's important. And that young lady that was shown, her life is valuable enough that we need to talk about what is happening and to not get caught up in the white noise. I think that that's a critical piece. So I will let you know, Bishop, if I'm able to come back, but you all are in great hands with Dr. Divine Pryor, whether I can or not. And thank you again for sharing this evening with me and sharing this opportunity. And for all of those real talkers, please know that ELMCOR is here for you. For those of you who are in Queens, or in the city at whole, we are here. We are here to be a place of convening, and we are your community and always have you in the front of our minds. So I just want to say that.
And big shout out to my brother, my big brother, Lou Benson, who is, I don't know what you guys would characterize him there at ELMCOR. What would you characterize him as? The godfather? What do you call him?
He is definitely a part of the founding fathers of ELMCOR, right? There's been many people, and he's definitely one of the most critical parts of the founding fathers, and really did a lot for rehabilitations of human beings, a lot for the rehabilitation of human beings.
Yes. So shout out to ELMCOR and the great work that you're doing, Saeeda. Thank you so much for being with us on tonight. And I will be at the gala next week. So I will see you there, and I'm excited about coming. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Real Talkers, for welcoming our guest, Saeeda. Bishop, wow. Another exciting conversation.
Tremendous.
But, I mean, just like we said in our production meeting last week, just really trying to find the things that people, the nerve center of people's everyday situations and interactions, and this is what's happening.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I'm glad that we're bringing some light to it, and we're ringing that bell, that sounding that alarm, and hopefully people will listen, continue to be very careful, and put the right people in these political offices that can help provoke some change.
Yeah. Well, listen, I want to thank all the Real Talkers on tonight for being with us. I want you to put the ways to give to support our broadcast on tonight. Those of you that can support us on this evening, $ the Kohai Nation, Bishop Mitchell G. Taylor, or you can give online at kohaination.org. kohaination.org. And I would that you would support us so we can continue to bring excellent programming. We're going to be doing some remotes and bringing in some different content over the next few weeks as spring is in the air, and different things are happening, and we're on the rise. As we're about to close, go ahead and start hitting that Cash App. Everybody, just sow a seed, give an offering, give a gift, give something to support us on tonight. I would encourage everyone to give a gift of $24 on this evening. If you can't give 24, give something with a 2 in it, something with a 4 in it. Whether it's $12, $14, $4, $2, whatever it may be. Thank you, Valencia. Let the Lord use you in the way that he can, so we can continue to be useful to you in this space. All right. Coming up on Wednesday for us, Wednesday morning at 6 a.m. is the Wednesday morning word. And I encourage everyone, take a picture of the Zoom ID. We have about 60 or 65 people that join us on Zoom. It must be a serious thing if folks come in on Zoom. When you come in on Zoom, that means you want to be there. So thank you all, the Wednesday morning worders that will join us. And then at 12 noon, and those of you that missed this past Wednesday, word on Wednesday, I was afforded the opportunity to bring forth the word. Pastor Hassan is in charge of this service, but I was afforded the opportunity to bring forth the word on Wednesday. And my Lord, we had church. We had a wonderful time. So this Wednesday, meet us at 12 noon again. We're building that service. Eventually, we're going to bring people in like Bishop Liston Page II to preach for us at 12 o'clock on Wednesdays, and different ones from around the country. And also on Wednesday nights, we have School of the Bible. Go ahead, Bishop, you could describe.
Oh, listen, it has been tremendous. I have normally two guests. They're not guests, they're co-hosts. I'll borrow that term from Bishop Taylor. Dr. Tanisha Snowden, and have another pastor, one of my elders, come on with me. So it's just been tremendous. That's every Wednesday at 7 o'clock. So tune in. It won't be no conflict, because you are Bishop Taylor early in the morning, then at 12 noon, and then we're back on the platform at 7 p.m. every Wednesday night.
Excellent. And then Friday night, we have Friday Night Encounter.
That's right. Friday Night Encounter at 7 o'clock. And that's normally where I may have a guest. If I don't have a guest, I've been preaching them myself or teaching them myself. So that's every Friday night at 7 o'clock.
Yes. And I agree, Valencia. Yes, the Dr. Page's panel is brilliant. Brilliant. Yes.
Thank you, Valencia.
It's a noteworthy. Wow, that's good. A noteworthy taking experience. Note-taking worthy experience. Yeah. It's good to take notes. All right. This has been awesome. This has been awesome. Thank you, Jatone, for your seed on this evening. Our prayers go out to the young lady who is recovering from that brutal attack, and to her family on tonight. And then, of course, our prayers go out to the family of the slain officer that we didn't get a chance to talk about, Officer Diller, and talk about the car stop. Maybe we'll hit that next week with Dr. Pryor. On Wednesday night, next Wednesday night, Elm Corps is celebrating, I think, their 60th anniversary.
Wow.
60th anniversary doing this great work in New York. And I'm going to be there to celebrate with my sister Saeeda, who's doing a tremendous job as the chief executive officer in that space. All right. Listen, it's 10:04 and we've had a great time. And Bishop, I don't know if you have any final words on tonight, but you know what mine are.
Walk with the king.
Walk with the king today and be a blessing. We'll see you next time.